with Celia Ward-Wallace, who is a life coach, author, speaker, mama, wife, entrepreneur extraordinaire. And we're going to talk a little bit about how she maintains her life-work balance and all of the things that she loves about her business and her wisdom and insight about relationships. And I just want to tell everybody that is listening, anybody that's watching, that I just feel so fortunate that we have time with Celia today, because she's crazy busy with her super successful launch. And she's just, I just so love her energy, and I'm so glad we got to connect. So Celia, thank you so much for making time to be able to talk today. I really, really appreciate it. And I know that the ladies who are listening to this are really going to get so much out of getting to hear from you. So thank you so much. First
I'm so happy to be with you, and I'm never too busy to make authentic connections. I am all about collaboration. I'm all about women linking arms and rising up together. So I'm an advanced planner. I often say I can't do it for like 4 weeks or something, but if you want to do it, we can do it. I just got to plan it out. So I'm happy.
Totally. Well, yeah, you are definitely a person that is the same in their actions as they are in their words. So that's like one of the first things that I really learned and appreciated about you. So
Awesome.
thank you. So one of the things I want to ask, I just described really briefly a little bit about what you do, but why don't you talk about what you do and why you love it?
Yeah, absolutely. So gosh, like probably all of the ladies listening, I'm totally multi-passionate, multi-talented entrepreneur. Primarily, my work is all around soulful living and soulful business and helping women who are my favorites. I do some stuff with men and companies and brands and stuff, but ideally it's working with the everyday woman, all the way from the point of just sort of finding her way in life and raising her consciousness and raising her awareness of how to have a better quality life, through the process of finding her purpose and calling, and then moving her even further if she wants to become a coach. I have a life coach certification company, so I train people to become life coaches and begin their journey as entrepreneurs. And then from there, if she's like really ready to like step up her game and launch online and set up a business that's totally soulful and based in, her purpose and really fulfilling and really just joyful, I take her into my Superfly Soulful Business program, which is all about, soup to nuts of like what you need to know to launch your business online, what you need to know to create your first product, what you need to know to get your first clients, get the first money start rolling in from that work that you love so much. And all the while hammering home the importance of the mindset work, the self-care, the spiritual soulful practices, all the stuff that grounds us in our day-to-day, and really just making sure that women are looking at themselves as whole people, remembering all of the divine wisdom that is within them from their birthright, remembering all of their worthiness and greatness that is already within them, that we don't need to seek these things. We don't need to create these things. We have all of it within ourselves. And so just being that sort of combo of, the super soulful, loving, big sister, mama, kind of you can do it cheerleader, with the other like kick you in the butt and be like, come on, tough love, like it's enough already, pick yourself up and go take some action and make it happen.
The accountability piece.
Yeah, make it happen. It's like the ladies I'm working with right now, we're like halfway through the program and I'm like, all right, enough already about fear, doubt, anxiety, I can't do it, I'm not enough. I'm like, let's do it, come on, it's time to do it, you just got to do it. So yeah, so that's what I do. And like you said, I'm a mama and a wife. I've been with my husband Joe for, this summer, 18 years. And we have two beautiful daughters together, Ava and Layla, who are 9 and 6. And that part of my life is huge and was there before I ever started my business. I'm only about 5 to 6 years into my business. So I had this whole, personal life before I even became an entrepreneur. Although I was an entrepreneur before, but that's a whole nother story.
Well, how did you come into your current business? How did you become a life coach and start with the speaking and writing and all of that?
So as I referenced, I was already an entrepreneur before, right out of college. I had a real like scarcity mindset. A lot of the programs that I had picked up and limitations that I had picked up was about, I had to get like a safe job and save my money and do all the things, check all the things on the boxes. So I got a 9 to 5 and I was working for the city. And within a year, I was like, oh my God, like my brain is dead here. Like there's no room for growth here. I had already promoted 4 times. And here I was like at 21, making like $75,000 a year, had pension, had benefits. And I just had no clue really what I was doing with my life. And I just thought, okay, well, I'll just kick it here and do this like a lot of people do. My work won't be my passion. And so simultaneously, my husband, who I met when I was 20, he is older than me and he is an entrepreneur at heart. So he sort of had the foresight at the beginning of the real estate market boom. And we got in on real estate. So we started in, I think it was like 2000 with our first year 2000 with our first little bitty piece of property. And then we just applied the same model and formula over and over and over again until we grew into a $5 million business. And even though on paper it was like really exciting and, we're like, oh, we have all this money and we're just like spending and doing all this fun stuff and crazy stuff. But at the same time, I was totally freaked out the entire time. I was a very fearful person and my husband was a risk taker. And so the two of us were like butting heads all the time because our perspectives were totally different and the way that we were raised was totally different. He was raised by a single mom in a really poor neighborhood. And so he had been like hustling and finding ways to like overcome his challenges since he was young. So he just felt like, we've arrived, like, what is there to be upset about? Like, no matter what, we're good. Whereas for me, I wasn't raised that way. I was raised like, there might not be enough money. You need to like hold on to it. Every day is like an up and down thing. And so all that to be said, we rode the wave of the real estate market and then we rode it down when it crashed. And so, I like to say, our failures are really our blessings, and that's where the biggest growth comes from. So because of the crash and some other things that went on in terms of personal crises with my husband, we ended up having to look at foreclosure and bankruptcy and basically starting all over again. And through that process, I went on about a year-long inner journey to rebuild myself and to coach myself and to figure out who I was in the world. And really, ultimately, it was about finding faith and spirit and universe and, whatever it is that you believe, whether it's your own self-worth that is your guiding North Star, or whether you believe in God or whatever it is. For me, I needed something more. It wasn't just me in the world wasn't enough for me. So I went seeking that. And through that journey, I started to pick up little bits and pieces of every type of, faith or religion or spiritual practice or community or whatever, where I was just like, okay, I like that little bit. I like that little bit. I like this, that. And I put it together and started to make my own formula of what I believed, as well as practices that would serve me. And so through that, as I started to practice it all, as I started to get my language together of like, what do I believe? As I started to talk to people all around me, using that language, starting to talk to them about the lessons that I had learned from what I had been through, I realized, I had an interest in counseling because I'd always been in counseling on and off for like 20 years. I'm a big advocate of therapy. But I decided to look into coaching. And so I went to get my coach certification with the Certified Coaches Federation. And when I took my class, it was literally one of those moments, like if you've never found your way and then you find your way, or if you've never found the love of your life and then you find them, it's like that feeling of like, I know with absolute certainty that this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know.
But I know this is it.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but like this feels me, because it felt like that confidence factor of, I've been talking to people my entire life. I've been standing on stage like in front of people, giving speeches, never having an ounce of fear, like just feeling called to speak. I've always been a leader. I've always been great with my relationships and always had all these amazing friendships and long-term relationships. And so it was like, oh, wait a minute, all these things that I had already been doing my whole life sort of effortlessly, I can package them together, plus tell stories and change people's lives, you know?
Right.
So
This is valuable for people.
and like I tell all my clients, you know, because of that fraud factor where they feel like, well, who wants to listen to me? How can I be an expert? And I'm like, your life it was what makes you an expert. Like what you've been through, if you've been through something, as long as you've been through it and you have something to say about it, there's somebody that wants to hear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's how I became a coach. And then all of the other stuff is more to it. But that's, you know, that was 5 or 6 years ago or so. And then I was still working my 9 to 5. And I just did like I tell my ladies now, if you have a 9 to 5 that you can tolerate and pays the bills, hang out there. Like, what is the hurry? You know, do you know what it feels like to be a full-time entrepreneur and starting from the beginning and have no source of income? Like that affects
Stressful.
your creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I tell them, instead, stick around at that job, you know, collect your paycheck, and at nights and weekends get your hustle on, you know, and build your business. And that's what I did. And so about 2 or 3 years into it, I just came home and I was like, honey, you know, I think I was making like $40,000 a year coaching. And I was like, okay, like I'm at least making about 40,000. I know it's going to go up, but I'm sort of at that tipping point where if I don't go now, like I'm maxing out. Like I only have so much time. There's only so much money I'm going to be able to make. And so I'm like, I'm at that tipping point where I got to go, or I just got to say like, this is all it's going to be. And literally the day I came home, I was like, and I don't want to go back to work tomorrow. Like, this is it. And, you know, talking about relationships, my husband was like, okay, let's do it, you know? And so, yeah. So now for the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years or so, I've been a full-time entrepreneur and just been hustling.
And for your husband to be a risk taker really paid off for you, because when he was like, but it wasn't really much of a risk because he already saw that your business was doing well. But for him to be so supportive, that must have had his that component, that part of his personality that was like, yeah, let's do this, let's make it work. Like that's really wonderful that he supported you in that way.
Yeah. I mean, I feel very, very blessed. I mean, one of the things when you talk about relationships is, to me, my relationship with my husband is my first priority. And that's how come we've been together for as long as we have. So there's a lot of secrets to success in relationships, but you know, if you don't think about and invest as much time and energy and cultivation into your relationship as you do to your business or you do to your children, then that's what you're going to end up getting. You're going to end up getting a stale relationship. You're going to end up getting a disconnected relationship. You're going to end up with somebody who doesn't really see you fully. And so for me, my husband has always been my best friend. I'm a talker, you know, that's my primary love language, is like, I want to be heard, you know, I want words of affirmation. So I love to talk. So whether he likes it or not, you know, he's going to hear about my day. He's going to hear about my thoughts. He's going to be my sounding board. And even though we're different, and sometimes I don't like the advice he gives me, or sometimes I feel like he doesn't really understand what I'm talking about or whatever, I'm still going to turn to him and talk to him because I want him to be up to speed on what's going on with me. So that being said, he was a part of the journey from the beginning, or before I even started the career. You know, he's been by my side all along, and we've been growing on this path, you know, in our own ways together, but constantly checking in about where we're at. So when it got to the point where I was doing this for a living, I remember when I first got my certification, literally like the first day I became a coach, and then I came home and I was like, okay, so now I got certified. Like, do you think I'm ready to see clients? Like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I know what I'm doing. Like, maybe I should wait. And he just told me, he's like, you've been doing this your whole life. Like, he's like, don't ever think of yourself as a beginner. He's like, you've been having people come over to the house and have a glass of wine, sit down, talk about their life. And you'll give them advice. You'll make plans for them. You'll follow up and call them and be like, what happened with the meeting? You know, and he's like, that's just who you are. And that's the gift that God gave you. And, you know, so don't feel like you're not ready. And then when I eventually left the job, he really was, you know, wholeheartedly behind me. And I feel like, you know, I know a lot of women struggle with this. They don't have that support. And it's certainly something that you and my clients, we talk about all the time. But at the same time, as women, I feel like we don't take enough responsibility
Mm-hmm.
for the kind of relationships that we have, you know, and I can just keep going on this. I know you have more to ask me, but for example, are you having sex with your husband? You know, like, I mean, like, come on, ladies, you know, like, you want your husband to be supportive of you. Like, are you being supportive in the ways that matter to him? You
Right.
know, so to be continued on that one.
Well, no, it is true though that it is about the responsibility and how you show up in your relationship too. Because I know so often, like I was talking to you about, so often my clients will come to me, and when I start talking to them about, okay, but what are you doing? And whether it's what are you doing for yourself or what are you doing for your relationship, they usually at the beginning they're not really ready to hear that. Like I was telling you at the beginning, they're usually like, no, I want you to tell me how I'm going to get him to do what I want him to do.
Yeah.
And so we have to really get into we really have to get into that, about not just the communication stuff, but about like when you have a relationship, and this is, you know, this, it's an entity by itself
Mm-hmm.
with its own energy. So like you have to nurture that relationship. And it's not just about like what you're getting out of it. It's about like, you need to check in and make sure that that's healthy, that connection's healthy. And
Yeah, and you create your reality. Like everything in your life is by your own creation. And, you know, what you're focusing on, what you're thinking about, what kind of action you're taking in the world, what kind of energy you're putting out, that's exactly what you receive as a direct response. You know, and I know not everybody's into that stuff, but it's scientific. You know,
right.
so if you just want to like do a little research on energy and metaphysics, like it sounds woo woo, but you know what? If you talk to every single billionaire in the world, they all know about energy. They all know about, you know, the power of intention, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
even the law of attraction. And, you know, it gets a little bit of a bad rap because people don't realize you have to take action with it. You know,
Right.
take aligned action. You can't just think a thought or think a wish and just say an intention every day. But
Mm-hmm.
you have to take forward movement along with that intention. But that's what creates the ripple effect of what then comes back your way. And so if you don't like your life, if you don't like your business, if you don't like your man or woman, if you're not looking at yourself, you know, hello, you're sort of missing the boat there.
Yeah, you're pulling that into you.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that you said that, because there was something I was just looking at recently, and it was talking about how, you know, for so long we've known some of these spiritual laws, and it seems like now they're being proven scientifically in different ways. And one of them was the idea that whatever you pay attention to and what you put your focus on multiplies in your life,
Mm-hmm.
which is something like, I think on a spiritual level, we get that. Like we know that that feels true. It resonates. But what is actually happening physiologically is that there's a part of your brain called your reticular activating system. And whatever you pay attention to, it actually tells that part of your brain, this is important, so notice it more.
Find it. It's like when you learn a new word and all of a sudden you see it everywhere, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so cool. It's like, I love that. I feel like this is a time that we're in where all those things that we knew to be true on a spiritual level are starting to be much more like widely accepted and better understood. And people are like, okay, it's time to evolve. Like, let's do this so we can have better
Well,
lives.
I mean, honestly, I mean, just because we're talking spiritual stuff, and I love this spiritual stuff, that all of my business is the combination of, you know, spirituality and business. And to me, it's one and the same. But, you know, we have to evolve. Like, there's no choice. I mean, we're at a point in history now where that's what is being called forth for us is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, hey, we need you guys to wake up and, you know, catch the memo
Yeah.
here. You know, we've been trying to tell you in every which way, and you're just so stuck in your like make money and individualized life that you forgot about all of the ancient ways of collectivity and one with the world and one with Mother Earth, and, you know, taking care of the planet and taking care of each other. And we're trying to tell you, like, that's what you're supposed to do. If you keep doing that, like, you can live forever. if you don't want to do those things, you're going to kill this planet,
Right.
And like now as we're coming to the tipping point where I think those of us who are awakening and having the consciousness, that's why I always tell people, you have to tell your story. You have to share your message. Like the responsibility is on you when you know more, to share more with people, because, and so many people feel like, well, why, nobody needs to hear my story, or nobody's going to think that what I'm talking about is valuable. And I'm like, that is not true at all, because everybody's day-to-day life experiences and lessons and what we're having these awarenesses about are the exact same like moments and stories that people need to hear for them to have that light bulb moment or them to awake to their own life, and just to shift that perspective just slightly is where the miracles come. So yeah.
Yeah.
As you can see, I get very excited about that.
Well, yeah. And I think too, sometimes you want to hear someone else's story, especially when they're kind of further along the path that you want to go on, because if there's something in their past that's the same as yours, and you relate to them, then now you see an example of like what's possible for you.
Yeah.
And that's so energizing and just like affirming, because you just so often, like, you don't know. I remember Lupita Nyong'o, when she won whatever, I think it was like one of her Golden Globe Awards, she was talking about how she never saw people win awards that looked like her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like such a huge thing, just the idea of like, when you see somebody achieve that looks like you, and whether it's like their past looks like yours, their story looks like yours, it's just like, it's so powerful. Like, it tells you can do that.
Yeah, well, that's why I think self-expression is one of the number one things that I work with women that are in my programs on, because first of all, women don't want to do it because they carry a lot of baggage, right? They've been through trauma, they've experienced shame, they have a lot of things that they've tried to push down or forget about because they want to come across in the world as though they're better, in a better place, maybe emotionally, than they are. And it's a self-coping mechanism most of the time, and it works for them. But it's just not sustainable, and it's certainly not congruent with living a honest, fulfilling, joyful life. Like, you're just not going to have that kind of experience if you don't deal with the crap and figure out how to purge yourself from the trauma that's in your genetic memory and that's in your body and in your soul. Like, you have to figure out how to shake it off to get it out there. And one of the most liberating ways is to just claim it and to share it, because then you take the power out of it. Now it can't, you don't have to hide it anymore. You don't have to carry the shame of it. You can allow that story to liberate you. You can allow that story to empower you. My sister was over yesterday, and she does women's work also. And we were sitting in the garden, and we were just talking about all the things that we've been through that have been really, really tough. Yeah. And that if we hadn't have gone through that, though, we wouldn't have the depth in our work now.
Yeah.
It's like, we could talk about a lot of things, but it wouldn't be as like just transformative if we didn't have these like war wounds, to be like, girl, I've been there, you think you're the only one. Let me tell you, let me pull back the veil of, perfection. Like, a lot of people, if you go to my website or you look at certain things of me online, you might think like, oh, I have an understanding of who she is. And that's why it's so important that I always put out videos, or that I'm like really involved in my communities where people really get to know me, because I'm like, yeah, I believe in beautiful branding. And do I want my website to look amazing? Absolutely. Do I want certain things to be like top of the line? Yes. But I'm still a human being just like you. I'm perfectly imperfect just like you. And maybe I'm a few steps ahead of you, but I've been exactly where you are. And I can share with you what I did to get to where I am now, so you could do it on your own. Or if you want to work with me, so I could be the one to sort of hold your hand and help elevate you, we can do that too. And that's what I want my ladies to do, right? That's what I'm trying to tell them, is like, just go out there, share your story. You would be so surprised how much better you feel, and also how many people's lives you can help.
Yeah. It is amazing, because when you can connect to someone's story, then you actually listen to what they have to say.
Right.
Yeah. And I remember when you and I met and we were talking a little bit about our past, it was like we were like the opposites.
Right, totally. We were the Oreo.
What was that?
The Oreo.
Yeah, right.
Except I was on the outside, you were on the inside.
Right.
All right, that's an inside joke.
Yeah, I know. It was just so interesting. It was like you had grown up in this community that was like a mostly a Black community, standing out. And I had grown up like in mostly a white community standing out. And it was just like, you always understand, I think, that experience of kind of being the outsider, I think, and I think that so many people have that, whether it's an experience like from a racial standpoint, or whether it's an experience of being poor when everybody else around you has money, or not speaking the language when other people are speaking it, or even things like, being emotionally sensitive, or even like being an empath or things like that, and not really being able to connect. I think like everybody in one way or another has that experience.
Yeah.
What I want to ask you, because you are a mom.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about your daughters, and you think about, because one of the things we were just talking about is like how everything is evolving spiritually. What kind of an understanding do you want to give your daughters about spirituality and like how they connect to the world and those kinds of things?
Yeah. So we live a fully conscious life, meaning that every single moment we're talking about exactly what we're experiencing, and we're putting it in the perspective of a greater purpose and calling for our life. So my husband and I have raised our girls from the beginning with a very strong spiritual understanding. Personally, we believe in God, but God is just a representation of all, it's just a title,
Right.
for what I believe is the same thing that we all believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I've always told my girls, like, you're a part of God. Like, you are God. God is in you. And so you have the glory of God within you, and you have that same God essence or goddess essence or whatever it is within you. You're perfect exactly as you were created. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be anything. Just be yourself. And so I'm always talking to them about loving themselves, that they're their number one. No matter what they're experiencing, to know that they love themselves. So if people don't want to hang with them, or, they're having a rough time or whatever, they can just go off and self-entertain, and that the gift that they're being given is that they'll love themselves, and that when they look at the world and they see the pain that other people have in the world, and just basically a lot of adults, are so unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of other families are so unhappy, in particular the parents. And we see that, and I try and explain it to them, that most people are just really unhappy because they feel so hurt, because they feel so sad, because they really don't love themselves, because nobody ever taught them how to love themselves. Mm-hmm. And they've been seeking that love and that validation from all these external sources, whether it's people and relationships, or whether it's things, or whether it's titles, or, I have a friend that's like a workaholic, and it's like clearly work is her fuel, that makes her feel valid in her life, but if they continue to practice the tools that we understand to be true now, that they won't have that issue, that they'll have other issues. Of course, we all do, but in general, they'll be like way ahead of the game, because they'll know that they just need to love themselves and accept themselves and take care of themselves. And so that's really huge. The other thing is we're big nature lovers, and so, we live in the inner city. And so it's like we create nature, like a city sacred nature connection here. And so our backyard, we put a lot of effort into our backyard being full of, you've seen some of my pictures I post, but, just making it like a total oasis, literally in the middle of South Central Los Angeles. And so I have all these trees and all these plants and all these butterflies and birds and squirrels and cats. And it's like every kind of, animal in the neighborhood wants to come hang out in our backyard, of course. But we just have like a fascination and an admiration for Mother Earth. And so we plant a lot of fruit trees. and, vegetables and stuff. And so like right now they're all just on their way to like blooming. So every day, the kids or I will be like, oh my God, look, the sunflower is just about to open up. Or, oh my God, our nectarine tree, we're going to have like 100 nectarines this year, or whatever. And so we're totally like watching the unfoldment of nature. And what I feel like for me, the biggest proof of God is in nature, so when I'm in nature, I'm just like, I don't know how this all works. And that's the whole point. Like it's obviously something bigger, greater, more genius than me.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly there's something going on. If you look at some of these succulent plants that, have every single like layer and they go deeper and they go deeper and they weave together in this like genius formula that you're just like, it just does that. It starts from a seed and it just comes out and it looks like that, and so I'm just like, those are the kind of things that ground me and remind me of how small I am in the universe, but also how magical I am, everything within me, within my body, within my mind, within my soul. So those are some of the ways. And we do talk about things like angels and spirits and God and heaven. And like we've had both my mother-in-law and my grandfather just passed in the last month. Mm-hmm. And so it was really interesting because we went to go tell the kids and they just were like, not like they didn't care, but they just were sort of like, oh, okay, like now their soul has passed on, like they just had this whole perspective on it. Like, oh, they're in heaven. They're probably hanging out, trying to figure out, because like my mother-in-law was like a super Christian and like she loves Jesus, and so they're probably like, well, Grandma Vani, she's not going to want to come back into another lifetime. Like she's going to stay up there in heaven because she loves Jesus so much. She just want to hang out there. Like she's, just having so much fun. And they're like, but Grandpa Sam, he probably already has started to think about like what other lifetime he's going to have and, come back in and stuff. So it's just really fascinating. Like we've laid the seeds, but they, with their imagination and their openness to, like I tell them all the time, everybody believes different things. So you can believe whatever you want to believe. I'm going to tell you what I believe, but it's not the only way. And, my husband is Christian and I'm not, and so he'll talk to them about the Bible or Jesus and things like that. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can see parallels between those teachings and some of the things that I believe, but I don't believe in that wholeheartedly. But if my girls want to, then, so be it. It's their life. They have to figure out what they believe. And so that's the answer. But I would say spirituality, soulfulness, creativity, open-mindedness are like key tenets in our household.
Yeah. And so many times people don't, they set a tone in their household, but it's not a tone that they've set intentionally. Mm-hmm. And it's so neat to see that you guys have set this intentional tone of these are the things that we know are important to us. And these are the things we talk about all the time.
Yeah. We got really lucky because right before I had kids is right when I started to have all these awakenings and, realizations. And, in terms of a relationship, husband, wife, mom, dad relationship, I would say my husband lets me take the lead. And so he's a dominant force, he's an equal partner. He's not like a passive husband or father, but he sort of lets me, because I'm the more like one that's the ideological person. I'm the more analytical person. I'm the one that reads the books and will think about like, okay, what is the conversation we should be having with them? Okay, my 9-year-old's just beginning at the beginning of puberty. And so like, I need to start having conversations with her. So I'll like research it and then I'll go to him and say, okay, this is what I found. And this is what I think we should, be on the same page about. Like, how do you feel about that? Is that cool with you? Are you ready for us to talk about this? Are you ready? Let's choose the language we're going to use. And so it is very intentional, but at the same time, he lets me sort of be the one to blaze the path.
Yeah.
And then once together we've cemented, this is our approach to it, then we're pretty much lock and step, which is again, sort of rare, but it's about living an intentional, conscious life. And that's what I'm saying is my goal for all the people I work with is to just continue to explain to them that you can create your life and your business by design. You have to be intentional though. You know,
Yeah.
you have to be awake. You can't let your life or your business just happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have
Because
to.
then everything is a response. It's just a response or a reaction instead of creating.
Yeah, it's not on your terms. You're just sort of, you know, following your way through it and doing your best to survive, which is how, you know, 95% of the people in the world, that's what they're doing. And that's why people say, oh, society this, society that. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, because a lot of people are really stuck, you know, and they just don't know, you know,
Yeah.
they nobody in their life has raised them up that way and given them the opportunity to know anything differently. You know, between our society leaders, our pastors, our teachers, our parents, our grandmas, whatever, the programming is so deep about status quo.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like American life is supposed to be like this.
Mm-hmm. And this is as far as you can go, and this is as much as you can do, and don't make people uncomfortable by being different. And
Totally.
yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm all about screw that.
Well, I think the last thing that I want to ask you about is what would be your favorite piece of relationship advice that you would give?
Ooh, I don't know that I can do just one, but I'll begin with saying have lots of sex. You know, I said that earlier, but I do mean that. I mean, I really feel like sex is a gift for, or love making, or however you want to look at it. But it's a gift for a relationship, and it's a bond for a relationship. And especially if you're at a new early part in your relationship, you know, in a committed relationship, a monogamous relationship, but like that's the time to really set the tone in your sexual relationship. And as a woman, like if you haven't looked at the stuff or the one taste or like some of the stuff that's all about the women's liberation around sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
ladies, you got to like look into this stuff. And there's, you know, you'd be surprised. Men are so visual, you know, whether we like it or not, you know, they may be looking at porn or who knows what they're looking at, but they like to see things, right? Mm-hmm. So there's all these cool videos cropping up of women coaches and that are talking about, you know, here's things you can do in your relationship sexually to
Mm-hmm.
spice it up, to, you know, deepen your connection. So certainly for my husband and myself, we watch those kind of things. We try and keep it going, keep it spicy, you know, like, you know, how are you going to expect anybody, whether it's a woman or a man, to be faithful in American society over a lifetime? Like that's a big ask, you know, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think there's a book about that called Mating in Captivity.
oh wow. Yeah.
It's about the difficulty of monogamy, like in just our regular society. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really challenging because you have to like your partner, you know, you have to love your partner, you have to be attracted to your partner, you know, there's all these different elements. And so for me, if you keep like regularly staying intimately connected and also not just doing the boring same thing each time, you know, and that you're owning your desire to have pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
That's huge.
and speaking that, or if you can't speak it, you know, showing, or if you can't show it yourself, showing videos and new techniques and stuff where, you know, they don't know any better, you know, they really don't. They love you. All they want is you. All they want is to be with you and be close to you. And as women, we're so like caught up in our mind. We have all these like things that are going on of why we push our men away from us. Mm-hmm. But they really are simple in that way. Like they just want the connection. And if you could just do it a few times a week, like I'm telling you, first of all, that your relationship will be that much better. Just another thing that's coming to mind is to realize that you each have your own journey and you're going to be at different places in that journey at different times. So you as an entrepreneur, you know, you may be at this place where you're really in flow, you know, you found your way, you're feeling excitement, you know, you're like realizing yourself and you've sort of like jumped ahead on your journey. You know, you've got into a sweet spot on your journey. And a lot of times our men or our women or our partners are not there yet, you know, or maybe they've already had that and now they're on some other stage, or maybe they've wanted that their whole life and they still don't know what
Yeah.
they're going to do, you know? And so although they're like supportive of you, it also triggers some pain for them. It also triggers some shame, some fear, some doubt, you know. It brings, your success is going to bring up feelings for them, which if you flip-flopped it and they were out there living large and taking risks and being like, honey, I'm going to invest X number of dollars into my business. And you're like, well, when are you going to start making some money? You know, you're talking about you want to spend $5,000 on what? And like, when's the last time you brought home $5,000? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like if you flip-flopped it, you would see that you too would be triggered. You too would have a lot come up for you. And I think that in relationships, we want to be like lockstep. Like we want to be like, okay, we're arm in arm. We're on this journey together. You know, I'm having success, you're having success. You know, I'm happy, you're happy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we have to remember, like, the only commitment was that we signed up to be partners for a lifetime. But it didn't mean that we were going to evolve as souls
Right.
simultaneously.
And we're always going to like and want and do the same things.
Yeah, exactly. And so
at the same time.
And so for me, the advice there is just to know that you may be in a stage in your life where you're really growing and your spouse may not yet be there. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. You have to respect where they're at in the journey and not be like giving them a hard time and like, why aren't you doing more with your life? Or, you know, women have often do a mistake of wanting to control their partners and feeling like, well, I'm just loving on you and I'm just trying to help you. I'm just let me fix things.
There's such a big difference between being a partner and being their coach or their mom, or, you know.
Yeah, you have to, sorry, I have all these different pieces of advice, but you have to let them fail, you know, like you do with your children. You know, at some point in time, you have to be like, okay, you know enough now to try it on your own. And if you go out there in the world and you make mistakes, then it's okay, because you know enough to pick yourself up again.
Yeah.
And with our partners, often we make the mistake of trying to control them so much, trying to do so much for them in their lives, that we dismantle their own ability to lead their own lives. And then we don't know why they're not motivated, or why they're not taking initiative, or why they're not going after their dreams. And then the flip side of that is when they need to go out there and try things, we want to swoop in and save them, you know, instead of just letting them have the experience they're supposed to have and trust that, you know. Like my husband, I used to fix everything for him. I used to do every application, every letter, every whatever. I'd be like, oh, let me do that for you. Oh, and then he'd get into the zone of, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? And I'd be like, okay, I'll do it for you. But then I realized he also started getting resentful of it. Like, why do you always feel like you need to be involved in everything that I'm doing? Why do you always feel like you need to fix it or make it better? You know, so we ended up having this backlash. So just in the last few years, I've been like, things will come up. I'll hear him talking about it, and I'll remember that old feeling of me wanting to get involved. And I'll just remind myself to stay quiet and just sort of observe it and go, oh, honey, that sounds really nice for you. You know, oh, great. Let me know how that goes. Let me know if you need anything. And then if he doesn't come around and ask me specifically to help him and also want to take the lead with it, then I don't do anything. And you know what's happened is there's been a few things where he totally missed the deadline, or he went into an interview completely unprepared, you know, and then he's coming home pissed at me saying, well, why didn't you help me? Or you knew this was important. Why didn't you do anything? And I told him, I was like, you know what, that has not worked for us. Like, that dynamic has not served us. You know, it's created a lot of strife between us. And I said, if you want those kind of things, you need to take initiative. You need to ask for it. And I'm happy to help you, but I need to be more of like the spot, come in, consult kind of thing, not the project manager, not the, you know, executioner. Like, this needs to be your life. You need to take the lead in your own life. And so since I made that shift, it's been really helpful for us. Like, I've seen him either not move forward on things because he's just not doing it, or he's moving forward on his own accord, and then very specifically saying, I need your help and I need your help on this. And can we set up a time? Like, when is good for you? You know, and we're doing it in a totally different way. So let your partner fail. You know, it's okay. They'll bounce back.
Yeah. I think one of the things you said was so important and powerful, and a lot of people miss it. And it was, you said that you hear what he's talking about, and then you are quiet and you observe.
Yeah.
And I think that we want to rush in to say something because we're not comfortable with the silence sometimes. And that's like the biggest thing that I've noticed. Like sometimes it's something that I talk with my clients a lot about, because it's the idea of, you've said what you need to say, now be quiet. If you can do that at that certain point, there are certain conversations and certain times where if you can be quiet, it's so powerful, and it has the opportunity to change the whole dynamic. But we have that, like, we want to rush in and make it better, or we want to say something like, or, you know, if you don't want to do that, you can just do this other thing, instead of just letting that truth just out there, and then
that uncomfortable pause.
Right.
What would happen if you just sat with it? You know, they really want us to be a lot more quiet than we are already. You know, so
which is probably not going to happen.
Yeah,
but
well, you know, it's that fine line between being fully yourself,
right,
and also being somebody that is compromising in a relationship and trying to make sure that they're bringing forth their best version of themselves. You know,
right.
Just being the first 5 years that we were together, you know, I just was like, F it, this is who I am. I'm big, I'm bold, I'm, you know, passionate, I'm a force to be reckoned with, and you better just live with it. And you know what that got us? That got us a lot of fighting. You know, that got us lots of, we didn't separate, you know, we were in love, but it was like conflict after another conflict after another conflict, because I just had to be heard. I had to, you know, get the last word. I had to debate, you know, and whatever, my opinion was important, you know, whatever. And now I'm just like, I can see the things coming a mile away, you know, and I'm just like, is that one important for me? I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just have a nice evening. You know,
Right.
I'm like, I don't know if I want to spend tonight digging in on that one, you know? So now I'll let a lot of things fly by and just sort of observe them. And I might say one or two little things, but I don't go in, you know, and you know how you start to have a conversation and you can see that it's starting to go off.
Yeah.
I don't go then and try and solve it. I don't then go and try and double down. When it starts going off, now I realize we're just having a miscommunication. Our energy is different today. You know, it's nothing personal. And if it's not that big of a deal, I'll just be like, okay, babe, cool. You know what? I'll hold on 1 second. And then I'll just like go upstairs, and because we have two floors, and I'll just come back in like 15 minutes or something.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like the moment is past. We don't even need to talk about it. I'm like,
it's like, let's do reset on this part of the day.
Yeah. Or if my husband comes home and I can just pick up on the energy, like that he's just, for whatever reason, irritable. Those are the days where I'll just be a little bit more absent. You know, I'll just be like, you know, oh, babe, what do you need? Okay, cool. And then I'll be like up in my office, puttering around, getting the kids together, whatever. And then come back maybe a couple hours later, check in on, you know, get a temperature pulse again and be like, okay, I'm going to go watch Grey's Anatomy. Okay. If you want to come out upstairs, you can, you know, and a lot of times men just need their space, you know, they don't have enough space in life. So for him,
and then what we do is we get all in their face because we want to know what's wrong, because we want to like, well, what's wrong? Well, you're not talking about it. Well, talk to me. What's going on? Tell me what's going on. And they're like, oh my God, if you would just be quiet for like 2 seconds.
Right. Like nothing's going on. I need to decompress. I'm living a regular life in society that is challenging, and I'm feeling overwhelmed or depressed or whatever it is, just like everyone else. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes we're that person.
Yeah.
Like, because I know sometimes it's me where I'll just be like, because I'm introverted, so I don't really want somebody to come at me, you know, like right when I get home and be like, what's going on? How are you doing? What is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I need to take a shower and just like decompress and regroup for a second, and then I will be right back with you.
Yeah. One other tip that I just thought of when you said that is I often send my husband emails. So certain things that are not like super, super important, they're more like check-ins, right? Like if I want to so like we'll check in for the week. A lot of times I'll send him an email and I'll be like, okay, just a reminder, Tuesday I got that meeting thing. Thursday the girls got soccer. Saturday we have X, and then I'll give him like 3 other things in that email that are sort of like check-in things. Like let's not forget to pay the mortgage. You know, are you good with X, Y, and Z? And then I'll send it to him. So instead of having to have that verbal conversation, which often can trigger a lot because there's so many like to-dos and you know, negotiations and all this stuff, I'll send it to him. And then as long as he'll just write back and be like, okay, that's literally, he'll be like,
yeah.
cool, or whatever. And as long as he writes back, then I just presume it's been approved, you know, or that he knows it. And so then later on in the week when I'm like, okay, babe, don't forget to pick up the kids because I got my conference call or whatever, you know, sometimes he'll be like, wait, what do you mean? And I'll be like, oh yeah, remember the email? And he'll be like, oh yeah, you know, and so I'll just be like, I feel like I already got it approved. I already got it through. We didn't have to fight about it. There didn't have to be a whole negotiation. So sometimes the email comes in handy for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip because a lot of times when people are trying to have those face-to-face conversations, it makes it seem like everything is on the same level as far as like importance or urgency or whatever. And it's like, no, this is just our day-to-day stuff. Like we can have our face-to-face interaction be about like our, you know,
more important things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. The honey-do list, you know, and it's not just the honey-do list, our list too, but like the laundry list of the minutia of things to talk about. Those are the kind of things I try and send in the email. Cause it's just like, I just want to dump them out of my brain and make sure that you saw them. And if you have some issue with them, you'll bring it up to me and we'll talk about it in more detail. But otherwise, I just want to tell you, but if he's in person, you know, he gets to overload where he's just like, all right, well, that's already been like 6 things. Like what else, you know, how many things are you going to tell me, you know? So,
and I have to keep them all memorized in my head instead of having an email to look back at. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish he doesn't look at the email again. But yeah.
He just types back cool. And it's,
hey, it works for us.
That's cool.
For your ladies.
No, that's good. Yeah, I think that would work for a lot of people, actually. I think my husband and I do something similar, but we do it with texts. Like we always forget that there's important stuff that we had to talk to each other about until we're both doing something else. And then we're like, oh yeah, don't forget blah, 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 you know, and like we communicate about minutia through our texts.
Yeah, so. We do too. Yeah. We're checking in all throughout the day. That's just life. I mean, that is interesting. A lot of people don't check in a lot with their partner, but that's worked for us, you know, checking, you know, we usually will check in once or twice while he's at work and I'm working from home.
Yeah. So if people want to get a hold of you and work with you and see what's going on with you and what you're doing, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Oh, goodness. Okay, let's think about that. I have a few different options. So the first and foremost, they can just go to my website, CeliaWard-Wallace.com. And
I'll put that on underneath, links to that.
On there, you can see everything. If you're interested in becoming a life coach and you want to take either an online certification with me or an in-person certification with me, you can still connect with me through my website, but you can also look at the program. It's at certifiedcoachesfederation.com. In September, I'll be launching the next round of the Superfly Soulful Business Program. And so you can check that out at thesuperflyprogram.com. And the last thing I would say is if you are a soulful female entrepreneur and you're looking for a community of like-minded women, you should come hang with Chris and myself. And we have about 1,000 other women in my totally free private Facebook mastermind group. So that's called the Superfly Society Mastermind. And if you just look it up on Facebook, the Superfly Society Mastermind, you'll find it and just request to join and I'll add you in. And there we just talk all things, everything we've been talking about today and everything about building your business and staying aligned and finding your purpose and so on and so on. So yeah, there's lots of ways to do it. Either way, just comment, say something, send me an email. You can find me everywhere.
And just a note about Celia's Facebook community. It's one of the few places, and I was telling her this, it's one of the few places that I love to be in it because the energy is always positive. People are always real supportive of each other. And aside from the emotional and spiritual component of getting support in those areas and people being willing to like lift you up when you're not feeling good, you know, and you're over there, there's concrete, actionable business stuff in there. So it's not one or the other in her community. It's like there's the whole, okay, everybody, you know, we can do this, let's do this together part, and then there's the, and this is how we're going to do it, XYZ part. So
and
I really love that.
That's what you need. That's the soulful business fusion for me. It's like, we're going to do all the inner work. We're going to have community. We're going to lift each other up, but we're also going to boom, 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 be knowing what's the next step. Like, it doesn't matter where you are on the journey, but you should be taking some forward action and, you know,
have to act.
Yeah. Be gentle with yourself. Don't beat yourself up about it. But at the same time, take whatever next best step you can, and it's going to be all good. I'm so blessed to be with you and be with your audience. Lots of love to all of you guys.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to spend this time with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.